Hi everyone, this is Raga Mandala, and welcome to another episode of Career Corner. Voting is the most important civic duty, and the stakes cannot be higher with the ongoing presidential elections as well as Oregon's next kid governor elections. Teaching civics education to young kids is one of the most fundamental objectives of the Kid Governor program. As the current kid governor of Oregon, motivating kids to reach out to their legislators and getting their voices heard by lawmakers is a key part of my campaign to end homelessness. My guest in today's episode, Oregon Senator for District 17, Dr. Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, is perfectly positioned to offer great insights into legislation and what kids can do. Senator Steiner Hayward got her undergraduate degree from the University of Chicago, the medical degree from the University of Massachusetts, and moved to the Northwest and completed her residency from OHSU, where she currently serves as the adjunct associate professor in the Department of Family Medicine. From volunteering at her daughter's schools, serving as the Girl Scouts troop leader and camp physician, to serving in the Oregon Senate since 2011, education and healthcare remain some of the biggest priorities for the senator. Senator Steiner Hayward, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you so much, Raga. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm very honored.
We are also joined by Oregon's Kid Governor Program Director, Miss Mary Beth Herker. Mary Beth, welcome back to the show. Thank you for facilitating this meeting with the senator.
Oh, thank you, Raga, for doing it.
So, Senator, you put on many hats. You're a mom, a doctor, and a senator, of course. Your career progression is out there for all of us to see. But could you please take us back to when you were my age? Did you, as a child, envision becoming what you are today? Are there any incidents from your childhood that stand out as the pivotal movements to your success?
Well, that's a great question. I have to say that I'm one of those odd people who knew what I wanted to do professionally when I was 4, or at least family legend has it that I decided I wanted to be a doctor when I was 4. So I did pursue that dream all the way through, and that's what I've been doing one way or another. I've been in healthcare for most of my life. I actually started volunteering at my local hospital the day I turned 14. As soon as you were 14, you could volunteer, and that's the day I walked into my local hospital. But I think one of the things that I don't think I would have anticipated being in the legislature, that was never really on my radar until much later in life. One thing that I did early in my life that I think taught me a lot was I was the first girl to play Little League Baseball in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I was 10 years old, so just about exactly the same age as you and your classmates. And, in those days, a girl playing Little League was a big deal. And I wasn't very good, mind you. I would not claim to be a great athlete, but I had a lot of fun and I learned to put up with a lot, including the boys were mostly okay. It was their parents, honestly, who were kind of difficult about a girl playing on the team. And it was really useful for me to learn how to ignore people who were acting out of fear or prejudice or bias and try to educate them through my behavior and my words that change is important and necessary, and this is how we have to keep our world moving forward.
Thank you for sharing that. Actually, I've read a book called Out of Left Field where there's a main character named Katie who was also the only girl in the Little League Baseball, and that was in 1955 or 57 where that took place. So it's very similar to your story, and that's very cool.
Yep.
So we understand the years of rigorous education someone needs to become a doctor. But sir, could you please share with us the personality traits you think are important to survive the demands of the healthcare profession?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about medicine is that there are a lot of different kinds of personalities that can do well, and it depends a little bit which specialty you choose in medicine does seem to vary a little bit by personality. I'm a pretty extroverted person. I love connecting with people. I love building relationships with people. I am a generalist by nature. I'm interested in lots of different kinds of books. I enjoy lots of different kinds of music. I eat lots of different kinds of food. And so being a family physician where I get to take care of kids and adults and older people and do a little bit of medicine, a little bit of surgery, that fit my nature really well. Other people really enjoy participating in things, want to be sort of a little bit more out of the limelight, and they prefer something like radiology or pathology, which are both really important specialties also. But I think that in general, having a desire to be a lifelong learner, always interested in learning something new, is really important. Having the willingness to admit that you're wrong or that you don't know something is really important. I'd say, frankly, that those two traits are important no matter what you do in your life, right? But those are very important. And the ability to be a good team player. You have to communicate really well with other people and be able to go from there.
I'm so delighted to hear about your vibrant personalities. So, moving on to your career as a senator, what made you want to pursue politics? Did you take any courses related to this while in medical school?
No, I didn't take any courses related to that, but very early on in medical school, I got involved with the American Academy of Family Physicians. That's the national organization for family physicians. And I actually served on a national committee as a medical student. I served on a national AAFP committee because I was interested in understanding how large organizations worked. And from there, I got more and more involved, and I was on the board of the Oregon Academy of Family Physicians, and in fact served as their president. And I also, back in 2002, late 2002, I took over running what was called External and Legislative Affairs for the Oregon Academy of Family Physicians. And that meant I started spending a lot of time in Salem working on the issues that I thought were important, including ensuring that every Oregonian had access to high quality, affordable health care. That was really important to me because everybody deserves the chance to be healthy, right? And health means lots of other things besides just being what happens in the doctor's office. And that's one of the things that over the years I learned more and more, which is about the social determinants of health, right? You're working on homelessness, which is such an important issue because everybody also needs a safe, affordable place to live. And they need good, nutritious food that they can afford, and they need living wage jobs and a strong economy and good transportation and transit infrastructure and a clean environment. All of these things contribute to people's health. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a generalist by nature, and I kind of look at the world in a very matrixed, interconnected way, right? And so in the legislature, it's often a lot like medicine. People tend to specialize in one area or another. And I got to a place where I realized that a lot of people were missing the connections between lots of different areas, and that was maybe something that I could bring to the legislature and bring that generalist perspective, that matrixed worldview into the forefront in the legislature and help people understand that if we wanted Oregon to thrive, we need to break down the silos that separate different topic areas.
Thank you so much. That is so inspiring. So is it common for medical students to join the AAFP Academy?
A lot of medical students do get involved with student interest groups for either family medicine or another specialty they're interested in, or public policy. Now, OHSU, for example, the medical school at OHSU has a public policy student interest group, a health policy interest group. And I've gone and spoken to them several times to help them understand some of the work that I do and ways that they can get engaged in advocating for good public policy, especially around healthcare issues and public health.
Thank you for sharing that. So as the director of the Kid Governor program, Mary Beth here has outlined a very clear procedure to campaign for Oregon's Kid Governor elections. Fifth graders get to make a 3-minute video highlighting their leadership skills, identifying a community issue they want to address, and their 3-point plan for how they want to address that issue. That's how I became Oregon's Kid Governor, by making a video on my plan for how I want to address homelessness. So from the time you decided to pursue politics to the time you became a senator, what did that journey look like for you?
That's a great question, and mine's a somewhat unusual path, as maybe Mary Beth remembers. I did not run in a primary and then in a general election when I first came in. My predecessor, Suzanne Bonamici, who was the state senator for this district before I was, ran for Congress unexpectedly because our then Congressman Wu, resigned due to some health issues that he was facing. And so after Congressman Wu resigned, people had encouraged me to think about running in the past, but there weren't really any open seats. And I had a lot of admiration for Senator Bonamici and then Representative Mitch Greenlick, who were my senator and representative at the time. So I was talking to Suzanne, she's a good friend of mine, thank goodness, now Congresswoman Bonamici, and about whether she was going to run for Congressman Wu's seat. And she said, you know, if I run and I win, I think you should be thinking about running for my seat. And interestingly, just 3 weeks before that, somebody at the Oregon Medical Association's legislative committee, which I was also on at the time, said to me, you know, Elizabeth, you should think about running. So I thought, if the universe tells me twice in 3 weeks I should think about running, I should. And that was in late July of 2011. And Congresswoman Bonamici won the primary, the Democratic primary for that at the end of October of that year. So in the meantime, I'd been doing a lot of talking to people to try to understand more about issues I wasn't as familiar with, to learn more about housing, to learn more about education, to learn more about transportation and transit, things that I thought would be important for me to understand better if I wanted to be a legislator. And I started meeting with people, county commissioners who were important. And I moved forward with that appointment process because it was an appointment process after Congresswoman, then Senator Bonamici, resigned from her seat, and won appointment through the process of going through the nominating convention with the precinct committee people for the district, and then going in front of the county commissioners for my district, which includes parts of Multnomah and Washington County. So I had 10 county commissioners making the decision. So, and I will say, and this is particularly important for the women listening to this, the young women listening to this, I did something that had never been done in Oregon history before. I beat a sitting state representative for this appointment, because normally it's state representatives who win appointment to empty Senate seats, right? Vacant Senate seats. And I did it because I knew I had to work harder and better, because women, unfortunately, still have to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good sometimes. And I really wanted this seat. And I knew that if I really wanted it, I had to work very hard. And I did, and I won.
It's so inspiring to learn the backstory behind your election.
Thank you.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced as a politician? How did the pandemic impact your role as a senator?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for me is that I'm a very science-oriented person. Not surprising, I'm a doctor, right? And I'm also a believer in education and really digging into an issue and doing my homework. And so I will admit I get a little frustrated sometimes when there are issues that come up that are related to science or other places where evidence really matters, evidence-based policy, for example. And people have ideologies that keep them from recognizing the validity of the science, right? We see this around immunizations, for example, which is something I've worked on a lot and it's very important for public health. So with the pandemic, we're seeing this again with people sometimes refusing to wear masks or doing things like that. And that frustrates the heck out of me, to be honest with you, because I really wish that people would understand that this is not a partisan issue. This is not a conspiracy theory, that coronavirus is a very serious disease. And as frustrated as we all are by this, I mean, I don't like wearing a mask any more than anybody else, but I do it to protect myself and to protect everybody else. And that's just a science-based decision. So I get kind of frustrated sometimes when people pay more attention to ideology or conspiracy theories or don't do their own homework to figure stuff out. And as a result, we struggle to get good policy through.
So how do you overcome these challenges, especially when others refuse to see your point of view?
I think one of the most important things is to not be belligerent, right? We want to start by asking questions, and we want to start by assuming good intent, right? I'm sure you or some of your friends have had disagreements with other people. And it's always easier and more successful if we say, help me understand where this information's coming from, what your concerns are, what your fears are, right? And help us understand that a little bit better so we can ask questions and show respect for the other person. That's really important, right? Because if we start by saying, oh gosh, you must be dumb to think that, or I can't believe that anybody believes that, if it's really disrespectful. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody. So I often start by finding common ground with other people, talking about what our shared goals are, talking about the different paths that we might use to get to those goals, and then working to educate and overcome myth and things like that through those conversations. It's really about relationships. As I mentioned earlier, I love building relationships with people, and that's really helpful in politics too, because then you build trust.
Yeah, thanks for that valuable advice, something we kids can use every day. Speaking of kids, what information should we include when communicating with you?
So if there are things that you want to write to me about, and I should mention, by the way, that in 2019, I helped pass legislation that was brought to me by fifth graders from my district, right? They came to me with a problem that they were concerned about how animals who were used in laboratory testing were treated, especially dogs and cats, after they were no longer useful for the testing, and had a proposal for what the state should do about that to help those animals. And I worked with them for over a year, and we got this legislation through to protect dogs and cats after they've been used for research. And that was an idea that was brought to me by fifth graders. So it was really great, and that made me really excited. And it brings home the point that no one is too young. People of any age can have a significant influence on public policy. So if you or the people listening to this have an idea, I encourage you to write to me. My email's super easy. It's just sen.elizabethsteinerhayward@oregonlegislature.gov, or you can just Google me and I show up everywhere. And I think Mary Beth can attest to the fact that I'm a pretty nice person, and I like to talk to people pretty well. She's worked with me a long time. But you write to me and you say, here's what I'm interested in. Here's what I'm concerned about. This is why I think it's a problem. Here's a proposed solution. Don't just write to me and say, here's a problem, fix it, right? Take some ownership, do the research, and tell me some ideas. It may be that those ideas aren't quite perfect and we're going to have to shape them a little bit, or it may be that there's information I can give that helps you realize that maybe it's not as big a problem, but feel free to write. If you have a concern or there's something you're passionate about, if you're interested in legislation that's going through the legislature and you want to know your support, I love getting email from my constituents, and we try to answer all of it if it comes from somebody in our district. So, and it's always better, I will say this, sometimes you get on mailing lists and they're like, oh, send this survey to your state senator. And it's a form email, right? And I get 150 emails with the same subject line and the same text. And the only thing that's different is the signature, like who wrote the email. I'm sorry. If you care enough about something to write to me, please at least take the time to customize it a little bit, right? Change the subject line, put in your own first paragraph about why it's worth it to you to take the time to do this. And then you can leave the rest of the form mail if you want. But I want to hear from you. I don't want to hear what some political consultant somewhere told somebody was the most effective way to write to a legislator. I want to know what Raga thinks. I want to know what Mary Beth thinks. I want to know what people in my district really believe and why it's important to them.
That is super useful information. Thank you. So how important do you think it is, or do you think is such engagement from the youngest community members? I
think it's critically important. You all are our future, right? I'm an old lady. Well, maybe not too old, but I'm almost 60. And the future is you. The future is the kids in elementary and middle and high school right now. Everybody needs to engage. Everybody needs to tell their elected officials at the state, county, federal level what's important to them and what they want. And even if you're too young to vote, that doesn't mean you're too young to make a difference. As I said, 5th graders helped me get legislation through. Really important. And you can make a difference. And you should be. One of the great advantages of Oregon's vote by mail system is that you can sit with your parents and talk with them as they're voting. You can look at the voter's pamphlet and you can start reading about the various ballot measures. There are some really interesting ballot measures this year. And I urge you and your listeners to read them and to read the arguments for and against and have conversations with your parents about what do you think about this information and why do you think this is a good idea or not a good idea? How are you going to vote on this and why? It's a great opportunity to learn more and to start to engage in, as you pointed out, the most important civic activity.
Speaking of future, the Kid Governor program has proved to be a great way of introducing civics education to young children. What, in your mind, are things legislators can do to promote civics education in the minds of children in our communities?
That's a really great question. It's really important. I think we can do a lot of things. The first is we can do podcasts like this. And that's one of the reasons I'm delighted to be invited, because I'm assuming that you've got pretty good circulation now, right? And it's going to go out through the Kid Governor program, and people will have an opportunity to watch it and to learn from your great questions and hopefully my useful answers. And then they too can understand how to be engaged. So legislators can and should visit schools or visit, these days, online classrooms. It makes it much easier, right? I can go to a dozen 5th grade classes without ever leaving the comfort of my living room. And although sometimes I kind of like to leave the comfort of my living room and go to the office, but anyway, all legislators can and should do that. We should be engaging with scout troops and with 4-H and Future Farmers of America and any other kid organization where people care about engaging with the world around them. And I've gone to talk with student classes, with 4th and 5th grade classes across my district. I've gone to high schools to promote voter registration. I've talked to American history government classes in our high schools. So I love doing that, and I would urge all legislators, and I think most of us do that, to get out there and really talk with students in their districts.
Thank you. This is all great feedback. How does being a politician affect you as a person? Are you able to draw the line and still be able to spend time with your family? What's your secret to managing your various responsibilities effectively?
Well, I have to say that I'm lucky now. I mean, when I first became a legislator, I think my children were in 11th and 7th grade, my 2 younger ones. I have a daughter who's much older, but the 2 younger ones were then. So they were a little more independent, right? They weren't little kids, but I do have colleagues who have younger children. And they do a certain amount of juggling. We all do, right? Any parent with a career, man or woman, has to do a fair amount of juggling. Now, my youngest daughter is 21, so I don't have any little children anymore. My 2 older daughters live here in Portland, so I see them pretty frequently. My youngest is in Minnesota in college, so I don't see her quite as often, except FaceTime, thank goodness. So I have, more freedom to schedule my life the way I want. I think one of the interesting challenges in the pandemic, you asked me that question earlier, is actually feeling good about protecting time for myself and protecting time to work, right? Because the blend, I'm sure it's true for you, right? You're at home, you're in school. Are you in school? Are you at home? Is it time to do schoolwork? Is it time to hang out with your friends? We all are facing these challenges. But in general, I would say that there's an old expression, it's a little bit blunt, but nobody ever lies on their deathbed and thinks, I wish I could have spent more time at work, right? We all think, I wish I could have spent more time with my family. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't work. That doesn't mean we shouldn't find time to do the things that are important to us outside of work. It does mean that more often than not, either we can take a break and step away for things that are important, like hanging out with our kids, or going to a school play, or listening to someone in a piano recital or something like that, watching a sports game. And we need to do that as well. So it's an important thing to remember that some work thing can probably wait till tomorrow.
I have a 2-year-old sister, and I see my parents juggling every day.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you're a big help to them, though. Having a reliable 5th grader around is a big help to people with little kids.
Yeah, but she's cute and she's funny. So
I bet.
So my final question is, what advice do you have for young children that aspire to become career politicians?
I think it's really important to have other life experience first, right? I went to college, and one of the reasons, you mentioned that I went to the University of Chicago, and one of the reasons I went there is because at the time, it was one of the only top-notch universities that also had strong diversification requirements. So I could get my pre-med requirements, since I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and I could also major in something that wasn't a science. So I actually majored in college in comparative religion, because I thought it would be useful for helping me be a better, more empathetic physician. It was interesting. So that was really important. And then I worked for a couple of years between college and medical school, because I really felt strongly that to be a good physician, you have to understand something about what it's like to work, full-time in another kind of setting, and to be working in a basic minimum wage job. So that's what I did, and that was really important to me. So I think having had those experiences, having been a physician and seeing what it was like for my patients on the front line, all of those things make me a better legislator. So I think getting a broad range of life experience is really important too.
Comparative religion, medicine, and legislation, a multi-faced personality indeed. Thank you for talking us through your experience.
I appreciate the opportunity, Raga, and I commend you on the work that you're doing in your role as kid governor. It's really an honor and privilege to be with you, and I'm delighted to have one of my constituents be in this really important role.
Thank you so much. Mary Beth, do you have any questions for the Senator that may help bring greater awareness for community issues in young children?
Yeah, well, you've met Raga, and you can tell that she's quite a spitfire. She's really passionate about what she does, and she does a great job at what she's doing. Not unlike our previous kid governors, Erica Baldwin, who championed for finding forever homes for shelter pets, and Don Peters, who addressed bullying. But we've, over the course of the 3 years that we've run this program, we've had over 60 videos submitted by 5th graders with ideas that range from making playgrounds accessible for disabled kids, because his sister was disabled and she couldn't have recess with everybody else, to the environment, to education, making, helping kids who struggle with education. And these ideas are coming from 5th graders. They have well-developed platforms and everything. Do you have any suggestions on how to promote this so that we can get more of these kids engaged and moving forward with their ideas?
I think that the kind of thing that Raga's doing by building this podcast is really important, because that's a medium that a lot of younger people listen to now, right? And I think doing little, like your 3-minute video where you said, this is why I want to be kid governor and this is what I would do. I think you also could do little videos like that teachers could show in 4th grade classrooms, right? 4th and 5th grade classrooms. And that's really important also, because I think, what's that old expression? You have to see it to be it, right? And when someone like us, Mary Beth, when an older person says, oh, you can do this, it's one thing. But when someone like Raga says, oh, you can do this, that's something else altogether. And I do think that putting together little pamphlets or maybe little videos with snippets from all the people who, from the last 10 years of kid governors, right? Here's what I did when I was the kid governor, and here's what I'm doing now, might be a kind of fun thing. People like those examples of how people use this experience to help them be more effective. I'd also be happy, having had this great experience, as I think others have, but I certainly had this great experience of having fifth graders come to me with a problem and help propose legislation that will make a huge difference to families who get to adopt these dogs and cats and to kids. So I think it's really important to I'd be happy to participate in a little video that says, look, these things make a difference. So those are some ideas that I might have.
Great.
And I'm afraid that I'm going to have to wrap up. I have another meeting starting at 11. So, or that started at 11. So I apologize because I really enjoy this conversation. I wish you all the best, Raga. Thank you so much for this invitation.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much, Mary Beth, for facilitating this meeting. That was a great interview. So much to learn from. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Career Corner with Senator Steiner Hayward, and please don't forget to tune into Raga's Fun Kitchen so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!